Welcome to Leader You by Black River Performance Management, where we believe work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. In this leadership podcast, we will dive into the lived experiences of people flourishing in today's workplace and beyond. Join us to hear real-life examples of experiences from our own lives and from the leaders we know. Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Leader You podcast. I'm your host, Angie Lion, and today it is me and you. We're going to have a discussion a little bit about one of our tenets at Black River, and it's one that I really have learned to grow into, and that tenet is vulnerability does not equal weakness. And I know for some of you, you might be thinking, what? We're going to talk about vulnerability. I don't like being vulnerable. Well, I would like to share that neither did I. So what we mean by vulnerability does not equal weakness is that actually to gain connection and to gain trust and to have any relationship with any human being, whether it's an intimate relationship, a friendship, or a relationship at work, requires vulnerability. And oftentimes, if we are raised in traumatic experiences, or we've been rejected or betrayed, or we've been hurt in life, we tend to armor up and become a lot more calloused and more fearful of being vulnerable because of our life experiences. So it's counterintuitive to want to be vulnerable, but let me just share some of my stories and what I've learned along the way as it relates to becoming vulnerability. So many of you know that Brené Brown rides along with me in my car and my podcasts. I've read all of her books, and I've really leaned into her research on vulnerability and started practicing it. And I want to say the first book I read of hers was Rising Strong. And that book was actually given to me when I was working at College of Western Idaho, and it was given to me by our dean of health services. And she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself yet. Her name's Kathleen. And she gave me the book Rising Strong by Brené Brown. And that is when I started to learn about vulnerability. And with that research that I learned, I recognized that I really had kind of a harder shell and didn't want to let a lot of people into my circle. Even though I had friends, I didn't share a lot of the deeper inner stuff that was going on. And it doesn't mean you need to share it with everybody, but still just staying a lot more surface level and not actually leaning in to that discomfort wasn't really serving me well. And it's something I have had to reevaluate over the years, how my lack of vulnerability wasn't serving me. What I've learned by becoming more vulnerable and sharing more, it actually brings me closer to my friends, closer to the people that I love, closer to my kids, closer to my loved one, to my partner, to my business partner. And really, it's become a strength. And when you grow up in an environment where vulnerability equals weakness, you tend to pick up some bad habits. And for me, some of those bad habits ended up being using anger. Anger was the one emotion that was acceptable in my upbringing. And so I hid behind anger. And it's kind of interesting because I remember being a younger kid, and I've always had this soft spot, this real connection and emotional self that I inherited from my mom. And she was very sensitive and cried easily. And it's something that I've always struggled with. And I used to be ashamed of the fact that I would cry easily. And I would cry when I was mad even. I remember times working in the operating room where I did not want to let somebody see me cry because I felt like it was weakness. And it's not like I wanted to cry, but I was more mad. I wasn't sad, and I was mad that the tears would come. But what I've come to learn through that, and also just being a child, when I was a child, I couldn't control my tears often because I was super sensitive and compassionate, and that's something that's part of me and my being, and it's never went away. So hiding it and running from it, it doesn't really serve us. In fact, at the time, my family members I remember a couple of my cousins that we still joke about it to this day, that they knew that they could make me cry. All they'd have to do is say something mean and make me cry. And I would beat their ass. So that was how I learned how to deal with my inability to show my feelings or my embarrassment of being weak or being seen as weak. And so my toughness or my ability to overpower them physically was my coping mechanism when they would try to say things to hurt my feelings or look at the crybaby, she's going to cry, try to get me to cry, do that kind of stuff. And so I learned to be tough. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that didn't serve me very well. And it's something that I've worked through all of this emotional intelligence training is that number one, I don't want somebody to control me with their words. Number two, I don't want to beat somebody's ass. Number three, vulnerability is okay. And it's actually a strength. And sometimes we're taught to suck it up, not have emotions, and that it's weakness. And I just ask you to challenge those thoughts and those beliefs, and ask yourself if that's actually serving you in your relationships, in your workplace, with your family, and really look into asking yourself those questions. And for some of you, even being vulnerable enough to look in the mirror or ask these questions is going to be very uncomfortable. In fact, that's why many people don't do personal development. They don't do professional development. They don't go to counseling. They don't have a therapist. They don't do the work because they actually are fearful of seeing, going too deep or finding out what it is that they might need to take a look at or change. Instead, there's a lot of other coping mechanisms like I used of the anger, running, staying busy, overachieving, numbing, distraction, you name it. There's something that we do as a coping mechanism to run from our feelings, hide them, numb them, whatever it is. Or we have the one acceptable emotion that we learned when we were growing up. And mine, like I said, was anger. And being tough was actually seen as a strength in my family. And so, not that any of that's true, but it's what happened. And so as I look back and I think about some of the things I developed along the way, I just recognized that those things weren't really serving me anymore, and they weren't helping me show up as my best self. Punching somebody is not exactly what I would want to do when I have a disagreement. Letting people control me by my emotions and be able to hijack me emotionally just by things that they say is not something that I want to do either. So having to take a look at all of that and figure out what's working, what do I want to keep doing, what do I want to start doing, and what do I want to stop doing. And taking that time to reflect and think about, my relationships and being vulnerable in those and sharing things like the moments when you're feeling insecure or the moments that you're feeling jealous or the moments that you're feeling angry or the moments that you're feeling disgusted or resentful. All of these emotions show up, and I challenge our listeners to dive into those emotions and find out what you're actually feeling, because when you're feeling, let's say, anger, in my case, it was a cop out for other emotions. Not even a cop out. I just didn't even have the language to say I'm feeling rejected or I'm feeling not seen, I'm feeling not heard. What do I need right now? And so as you explore this, you start to find out more about what you need, what would be helpful, what are you feeling, and that always takes vulnerability to do. But I can guarantee you, once you do this, you will actually start to have more connection with that person that you trust. And I can't promise that somebody won't hurt you if you're vulnerable. I cannot promise that. I wouldn't be vulnerable with people that have a history of hurting you. That's one thing I would do, is stay away from those people and sharing vulnerability with people who have hurt you in the past. I think people that you already feel like you have a strong sense of trust with, and that you want to go deeper in a relationship with them, this is a perfect person to really practice that vulnerability. For you, it might even be speaking up in a meeting, having a voice, asking for what you want, learning what you need. That all can feel very vulnerable at first, or public speaking, or doing anything that puts you outside your comfort zone and makes you feel at risk. Generally, there's some sort of fear behind it, and that vulnerability is fearful. And personal development has a lot of vulnerability in it because, like I said, we have to look at ourselves. And that's a lot harder to do than to look at other people and decide what they're doing wrong. Oftentimes we stay in victim mindset instead of actually and focus on our traumas, and we don't take enough time to focus on flipping that script around into overcoming and to what our traumas, how we can grow from those. And I was walking with a friend, and the friend said to me, for some reason, I feel this this feeling that maybe there's some kind of pressure in between us and I can't figure it out. She said, it's not anything that you're doing, but I kind of feel like you're the head mayor. And I said, what does that mean to you? And she said, I feel like maybe, I don't know, like you're in charge, or I feel less than you, or um, she tried to describe it, and I said, do you feel intimidated by me? And she said, yeah, I think that might be it. And I said, oh, I said, okay. I said, where do you think that comes from? Have I done something? Have I said something? Have I done something that would create those feelings? And she said, no, it actually hasn't come from you. It's something that I have noticed that happens with me. And she said, but I think it has to do with the fact that you have a degree and I don't. And I said, oh, okay, that makes so much sense. And I said, you know what? That is definitely from you. That is something that you're feeling insecure with about yourself that has nothing to do with me whatsoever, because I don't think like that at all of you. I never think I'm better than you. I think you, and I listed off a million things that I love about her. I talked to her about, what her strengths are, and that is never my intention to be better than because I have this. That degree that I got was for me, and and we had different paths. We had different journeys. Both of us came from rough environments. And it's something I'm proud of, but it doesn't make me a better person than somebody else. But it is something that can't be taken away from me. And I'm not going to hide it away, but I don't look down on anybody else. And if she's looking down on herself and feeling insecure, or feeling insignificant or not enough, those are things that she has to work through. And I was so grateful that she shared that with me, because I even called her later and I said, I'm so grateful that you shared this with me, because I would have never been able to, we'd never get to where we are right now. And even though that was a hard conversation for her to bring to my attention, it still brought it out into the light so we could shine some light on it. And the light was that I don't look down on her at all. She still is working through some issues that she hasn't healed in herself. And so those issues are just indicators for her of things that she still needs to heal. And now she has confidence that is not my intention. She has confidence. She knows that she's seen. She knows that she's loved. And after that conversation, while it was difficult for both of us, I feel closer to that person, to this friend. And I feel like her bravery and her vulnerability actually made both of us grow. And that's just a small example that happened just this week, where somebody shared their vulnerability with me. Um, and I think about even with my own adult children, sometimes sharing my um, vulnerability with them on what it feels like to be an adult, raising adult kids who really are living and thriving in their life, and it doesn't really feel like they need you. And so, which means you've done a good job, but on the vulnerability side, it's actually a scary place because you feel like, wow, I really, it's just a new phase of life and it's a transition. And I've shared that with my kids that I just want to be relevant in your lives still. And I don't want to parent you anymore. I just want a relationship. And so being able to share some of that vulnerability, and it doesn't matter whether it's in the workplace, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with a loved one, really sharing your heart, even though it's scary, it will honestly bring you closer. Thank you for joining us on the Leader U podcast, sponsored by Black River Performance Management. Leader U is an important part of Black River's initiative to bring high quality leadership development and organizational performance improvement solutions. Leader U is one of our initiatives that features different speakers whom provide their expertise and perspectives on a variety of workplace topics. I invite you to visit our webpage at www.blackriverpm.com. That is www.blackriver, the letter P as in performance, and the letter M as in management. We offer a wide range of services from training to performance improvement, coaching, retreats, and group facilitation and strategic planning. Our focus is to assist people in better understanding how to lead effectively and impactfully through a variety of evidence-based tools and practices. Let's just bring this back to the workplace. And I'm thinking of a quote that I read in Seth Godin's new book called The Song of Significance. And in the book, he said that 89% of managers are uncomfortable communicating with their employees, and the other 31% are lying. And I just love that quote because I really do believe that we all have a fear of difficult conversations, and some of us are better at it than others. But it is a skill that can be developed, and it's something that you can continue to improve and to work on. And but it does take vulnerability. It's fearful sometimes to people might not like you, or people might have things to say about you, and all of these types of things that keep us fearful. But honestly, talking about people never goes well either. It's better when you just have that conversation with the person and give them the opportunity to grow versus going around talking about it. So, a general rule that I like to use is if I wouldn't say it to the person, if I wouldn't say it to their face, I wouldn't want to say it about the person. So let's just say, for example, working with your team, whatever you want to say, make sure that you're willing to say to that person and ask them to give them the opportunity to level up or to get to the area that you want them to get to versus going around and talking behind them because that's their back, because that's not going to help them. It's not going to help you. People generally want to do a good job, and while they may make excuses or not even notice their behaviors, they will not get any better, and there won't be any opportunities for growth if you don't actually have the difficult conversation. And this happens in our personal relationships. It happens with our teenagers. It's a difficult conversation, and feedback is difficult to give. So I think we have to first be honest with ourselves and say and be vulnerable. Like, I'm not that great with difficult conversations. What am I going to do to improve this? It's a skill that I want to work on. So that is the first step. Then whatever you want to do from there, find a mentor, take a communications course, get some coaching, script out those conversations, be vulnerable, share it, practice with someone else that's not involved. There's a lot of different things that you can do. listen to the podcast. There's a lot of interpersonal skills in here that you can learn from some really amazing people. Especially there's actually a tab on our podcast that says interpersonal skills, difficult conversations, decision making. So you could actually go through the list of podcasts and find something that you feel like is a skill that you really want to start to develop. But that would require admitting and being vulnerable enough to share that you don't know, you're not very good at this. And that is a hard step to take. That is the first step we have to take in anything, whether it's substance abuse. Any of the 10-step programs have to do with, or 12, excuse me. Even in substance abuse, the 12-step programs start with the first step, which is admitting you have a problem, right? And that would be, I haven't arrived here. I'm not as good at public speaking as I'd like to be. I'm not as good at difficult conversations. I put my head in the sand and I hide from them. I avoid. I'm passive aggressive. I do whatever it is that you do. The behavior that you don't like anymore is the thing that you have to face. And that requires vulnerability. So back to the original tenet, which is vulnerability does not equal weakness. It's actually a strength. And being vulnerable is our greatest measure of courage. So I want to encourage you all today to take a step to be vulnerable, rather that's speaking up in a meeting and sharing your opinion, rather that is commenting, rather that is being really authentic in a conversation with a friend or a loved one or a child, to the point where you share your heart and what you're actually feeling and what you need. Name the feeling so you can tame it, and then ask for what you need. And that, in that step, that is showing vulnerability, it's showing strength, and people can actually help you. When you are able to own your own emotions and ask for what you need, that is a huge step towards accomplishing bigger and better things and living a more purposeful and meaningful life. So thank you for listening to the Leader You podcast. And I hope if this was helpful, you'll share it. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you and have a great day. Love you all.